First of the month, she'll probably speak about
Still, yep, I'm good. That's fine.
just for the sake of time.
Yes, but I know.
I wish I knew what you did.
I know. Exactly. This is good. I mean, tell me someone or anything. Someone, okay, I'd rather see that
Right.
an opportunity to bring up what you thought.
Planner one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I really like that. That he's kind of just waiting for the reins. He's understanding, supporting roles and all that.
Exactly. That's exactly what stood out to me. I'm sure Tammy is running a little late. Oh,
Is she coming?
I'm like, what's the first week of the month? Brent. So I'm like, she's probably.
She was kind of tired.
Okay, for a minute. Yeah. Missed you at the same time. Oh.
And I was
We was, yeah, we was one of those dates. So, okay. No, my life is we know and I enjoy that. Yeah. I know this is not virus from. Yes, virus from. Got a new case, nice.
All right.
Fancy.
All right, good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with the City Council work session for October 4th. First item on the agenda, update on Brownfield Assessment Grant. Whatever it's now.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. First item on your work session this evening, we've got Allison Moting, your Economic Development Director, here to update you on the status of the $500,000 EPA Brownfields and Land Revitalization Grant that you accepted back in June. It's a very significant award for Evans and allows us to move forward on primarily on the Highway 85 corridor, as well as the other two industrial parks in town. In terms of a number of categories of scope of work that Allison will update you on. Our purpose this evening is to update you on this before we actually get into implementation of that grant. If you have any questions or comments about the scope of work and what we're proposing to do, now would be the time to let us know that so we can proceed and get into the grant. We do have a 5-year window to accomplish the purposes of the grant that actually started on Friday of last week.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'll turn it over to Allison.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you, Randy. So back in June, we talked a little bit about the opportunities that the Brownfield Grant is going to provide for us on the Highway 85 corridor. Much of what we talked about is still the plan. We are looking forward to putting together a small steering committee, and then we will hire a consultant who will help us with our 4 main activities, which are starting with the kind of the planning and the outreach. So we want to do a full inventory of the properties on Highway 85. We want to make sure that we put together a communication plan that we can go out and talk to every one of those property owners, either individually or in small groups, really get an assessment of the existing properties and an understanding of who those owners are and how we can assist them. about half of the budget is going to be set aside for actual financial support to do the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments. So, somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 each. Those site assessments will be real dollars that can help property owners understand what's going on in their property and make sure that we are, saving them that money so they don't have to do that at some point in the future. And then, of course, we've talked about the land use code, I think, is one big piece of gathering some additional information so that as we are working concurrently with community development on the land use code, that we can identify what do property owners see for the corridor and how can we better utilize our land use code to promote redevelopment, because that's really what the point of the Brownfields grant is to take and put property into put it into productive use. So as mentioned before, there's no cash match for this grant. This is pretty much our staff time, and so the rest of those dollars will go directly into the activities for the corridor. And we'll be working at some point too with the Colorado Department of CDPHE on their brownfield programs as well, to make sure that we're connecting property owners with programs that can assist them as well. So I think that's all I have. We've been doing a lot of paperwork, shuffling a lot of papers back and forth. So just looking forward to identifying our steering committee and hiring a consultant and getting this kicked off. So.
The highlights of the scope of work.
Yeah, the scope of work to complete the comprehensive site inventory. We're going to conduct engagement opportunities with property owners along the corridor. We're going to identify and assist property owners with the environmental site assessments and remediation plans, and then again work with the land use code update, so that we can make sure that we're matching up the owners with, make sure that we all have matching expectations for the corridors. And I think that's it. Anything you want to add, Randy?
No, I say this is a check-in with council before we actually get started on the implementation, and just want to make sure that this is the scope of work that you had in mind as we move forward.
Any questions, comments, staff?
I thought we were going to include some industrial, maybe some industrial areas. Or, I think they did a.
So we did include the industrial park. So one of the nice things about this particular grant is that it is community-wide. So as we're moving through this process, we will bring in the industrial park at some point. I think our initial push is really going to be on Highway 85 because we want to take advantage of the land use code work that we're doing and the landscaping and some of the other activities that are happening now.
So, but if we have any money left over, we can use it in the industrial park.
Absolutely.
What about I think they did a phase 1 on, or they were looking at developing the First Avenue and 32nd Street, and they found dump contamination. I'll say I can't remember what the exact contamination was. But if we had enough money, could we also look at that site and see?
I can add it to the list certainly if contamination. Let's maybe talk a little bit. So this is an assessment grant, so if it's already been identified, I don't know that there's a lot that we can do, but can we connect them with some remediation if there are remediation needs? Absolutely, that's something we can do. So
because they dropped the project, that was 5 years ago.
Any other questions, comments?
Really quickly, where did we stand or where do we stand on possible funding for said improvements? Or have we, I don't know that we're even to that point yet, but I know one of the concerns that was originally voiced was, okay, they go out, they help identify issues, but then there's traditionally some budgetary constraints tied in there. And we were hopeful that perhaps there could be some assistance either through grants or something from the city to help those business owners. Have we had an opportunity to look at that yet?
Yeah, so the state of Colorado does have a voluntary cleanup program. It consists of, there's some grant money available, there are revolving loan funds, and so they have other programs depending on the nature of the contamination that can help private property owners with those remediation. So
And
that's
then
what
we can match them with that. Okay,
absolutely.
perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, the federal government, EPA's role is to do the assessment piece, and then they hand it off to the individual states to handle the cleanup, because every state has different regulations and different concerns, and so that's handled at the state level. The EPA pays for the assessments. So.
Thank you.
Anything else? No, like I said, I know when this first was talked about, there were some concerns from, some business owners along the 85 corridor, thinking that the EPA was going to come in and state was going to come in and shut them down and all that. And, once we reiterated to them that that was not the case and what the benefit of this grant was for, I think they definitely were more receptive to it. So good.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Not even 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in conjunction with the land use code work, this is a very nice opportunity to dovetail these two scopes of work and really take a hard look at the zoning and the land uses in that corridor. So, very good.
All right, next one, we'll do the road tax reports.
Well, Curtis and Jackie, we're going to join us, please. Curtis and Jackie are getting set up. We had this in your packet, your last work session, ran out of time to cover it. So we did want to bring this back to you for your questions and comments before we posted it. We intend to make this very transparent, post it on the website, include it in the next Evans Express, made available in paper to anybody who would want it. Now that we're 2.5 years into the collection of the new road tax, questions have come up. How much have you gained for that tax, and what have you been doing with the money? So what you're about to see is an effort to be as transparent as possible. You have many different types of explaining this in terms of there's some graphics, some narrative, so a little bit of everything for different people depending on how they want to see this information. So we'd appreciate any comments or feedback. Anything that's not clear, let us know. Anything else you'd like to see, we'd love to hear it. So with that, see, Jackie, you're going to start?
I believe I'll start. Yeah. We'll talk numbers and then I'll turn it back to Curtis to talk about the real important stuff. So just as a reminder, this is all the money that we're tracking since voters approved this tax back in April 2020. There's a 1% sales and use tax that we're holding specifically for the wishes of the voters of the city. In 2020, we received about $1.2 million of this road tax money. Again, that started in July 1st of that year. And we had only spent $400,000 of that money in that year. We budgeted very low, not knowing for sure what was going to happen in 2020 as well, and I think that served the city very well. In 2021, we were really pleased to see that the first full year of that revenue produced over $3 million. So that was our goal. That was our hope of this revenue stream, and it did. So we're very happy with that. We spent about $1.4 million in that year that Curtis will explain in future slides. And all of those monies, as we're not spending them in entirety each year, is rolling over for us to do bigger projects with that money. So in 2022, annual revenue is about $2.8 million projected, and we have $3.2 million of expenses planned for this current year. Do you want us to go right away with?
So here's just
Oh,
a
I
look
do
at some
so.
of the completed projects and the budgeted projects for the 2020, 2021, 22, and 23. We'll get further into this as the slides progress.
Thank you for that reminder. And so this is just a sample, if you will, of how we're tracking that and really what those mean each year. So at the top, you can see total revenues that are received in each of the years, including our projections out through 2027. I think what's important for us to recognize at this point is 2027's revenue is not even $2 million. So as it currently stands, this revenue stream will end June 30, 2027. So this plan that we have is to utilize those funds to their entirety, knowing that at this point, there will be an end to them. So you can see capital projects by fund each year. 2022 is a large one, $3.2 million of that we will be spending this year. And then in 2025 and 2026, two other larger chunks too, $4.5 million, $6.7 million. This includes not only the street maintenance line, which is the consistent number each year, at least $500,000 of money is going into street maintenance, while more of those funds are being set aside for helping with some of the larger widening and expansion projects around the city. Also, draw your attention to one other piece before I turn it over to Curtis to talk about the specifics. That future projects line, which is the column to the right, if it's too small to read the numbers, just look at the bottom if you can. So $17 million is identified unfunded capital road projects. So really important for us to look at how will we pay for all of these additional road projects, knowing that this funding stream at this point will end mid-year 27. Now for the real interesting part.
Thank you, Jackie. So I just wanted to give you a look at some of the major expansion projects that we've already done, that we have planned and budgeted currently, as well as the future planned projects. Just going to go over quick on this slide because we have graphical representation for a year by year in the coming slides. If we look here, this is the 2020 major road construction that shows 37th Street resurfacing from just east of US 85 to 23rd Avenue. This will go color representation for each year. So we can go now and look at the red. We do have two different projects on there, which is 47th Avenue widening from 37th Street to the edge of the city, as well as the 23rd Avenue extension from 37th Street to 42nd Street. On to 2022, we do see three different projects, which is the 23rd Avenue widening from 37th to 42nd Street, as well as the Idaho Street improvements, which recently finished, as well as the 35th Avenue resurfacing from 37th Street to the city limits. Projected for 2023, we do have the 37th Street widening from Sienna to 47th Street. Moving on to 2024, we do have 37th Street widening from Stampede to Sienna, as well as State Farm Road water line replacements from the northeast of the city. Going on to 2024, this is when we see us kind of expand out west a little more based off the federal funding that we have for the 37th Street widening from 65th Avenue to Arrowhead. And then going through 2026, we come back to 37th Street widening from Stampede to 35th Avenue. So here's a look at just all the major road construction that we have planned with these road tag budgeting prior or before we get into street maintenance and other projects. So for street maintenance, as mentioned, we do have a certain amount allotted each year. Overall, this is planned based on the quality of the street and the need for different kind of maintenance onto it. And total through the end of, or the sunrise of this tax is just over approximately $7.5 million. They're currently working on determining which roads are going to be have maintenance for next year, and you guys will hear that in a future council meeting. Here's just a graphical representation of what we've seen overall for changes, or at least significant pavement management projects since the beginning of the road tax. So you can see, a decent amount of area has been covered over the years, and there is plans again for more to be done. To see what that actually means for the roads inside the city, if we look at the PCI change, what we've seen overall, we've seen an increase from 60% in 2019 to 66% in 2021, which is different than what we see in the pie chart. This is because it is broken down into 7 different categories. This is the one that just kind of shows you the best graphical representation that we are improving our roads during this time frame. If we broke it out into all 7 categories, you would see kind of minimal change throughout, but this is just kind of more impactful on how this is done. And then most importantly, I know with the road tax, we have a specific kind of maintenance to widening budget that we want to stick to. And here's a look at the pie chart on 55% allocated to widening and 45% is allocated to maintenance. So we're kind of keeping it close to the 50-50 as well as we can. And pending any questions, this is all I have for you guys today.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from staff?
Oh, is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Other than Idaho Street, I don't see anything. You guys know what the story is. Yeah, I don't see anything east of Highway 85. So I just want to point out that the majority of our voters are in Ward 1. Since we are over on projections, I would suggest that we do something, even if it's in as simple as putting the recycled asphalt over the dirt roads. I mean, something over on the east side is pretty important, just if we would like to continue with getting voter approval for this 1 cent.
It's a nice segue to discussion we'd like to have with you a little bit later this evening as we talk about the general fund budget and some possible uses of some of those one-time funds. So, very good point.
Thank you.
Any other?
I'll add to that. I would like, I talked to Randy about this again. Like to see if we could, what the problems are with getting Trinidad Street ready to pave. If there's, I'm not sure if we have water lines to replace. I'm sure we have to do a storm sewer plan for that and get it done. But that's something that I definitely would like to see done because I think we need that completed. And another north-south run in that part of town. And there are some other streets that probably should be completed also. But I think that's a major one that I'd like to see done before the end of my term.
Okay. And as Curtis mentioned, we will be coming back to you either in December or January with next year's maintenance. And that's your opportunity to weigh in on chip seals and other mill and overlays and reconstructions and that sort of thing as we move across town with those maintenance.
Any other questions?
I just want to say this gives definitely a great visual for everyone to see what we're doing and how we're utilizing the monies for the roads. I do appreciate this. I think this is definitely needed just to see where we're at and how much more we need. And I'm glad that we're definitely talking about the general fund and how to utilize those monies for other projects as mentioned. So thank you for that.
Will this be posted on the website?
Sorry?
Will this be posted on the
Yes.
website?
Yes, absolutely.
It is.
On the
It is
website,
nice.
in the Evans Express, we'll let people know via social media that there are copies available to pick up, et cetera. So,
I just want to say that I'm pretty impressed within the 2.5 year time frame that we went from a 60% to a 66%. I mean, that's a pretty big. I mean, it doesn't look like it's a pretty large jump, but that's a pretty large jump when you are talking about roads, road improvements, road maintenance, and all that stuff. So, I mean, I'm definitely very glad that we're being transparent and we are actually showing the voters what we're doing with our money, and they can see the definite improvements throughout the community. So, thank you guys, appreciate that.
And I've certainly received comments, very positive comments about what's being completed.
I just have a quick question on the street maintenance budget. Showing the projections and then 2021, 2022, but for the next 3 years it drops down to $500,000, and then it jumps back up and back up. May I ask why that is so I understand?
Sure, great question. 37th Street widening phasing, that's needing a very large amount of that money in those specific years tied to our federal funding. So we're trying to kind of hold those funds until we get through 25, and then that frees up some money in 26 and 27 for road maintenance.
Thank you.
On these graphs or charts or maps, I can't think of a word, sorry. The items that we're showing that are color coded by year, does that include any of those street maintenance projects?
No, it does not.
Okay.
That's just the major expansions that we have planned for that time frame. The actual picture of all the different greens that are on there, that's the maintenance projects that were done, as well as what's doing this year. And then we don't know what's going to happen yet for 2023 because that's going to go in front of you guys here shortly.
Jules, can you call it back up one moment, please? That's a really good question. And one point I wanted to make very clearly, Curtis did a nice job of going through all the planned expansions through 2027 because we kind of know what those are. But the maintenance chart, however, and Councilmember Spear, part of your concern I think can be addressed by that's only showing 2.5 years worth of work. It's only showing through now because we don't know what the streets that will be taken care of. That one right there, yeah, that is 2 years worth of work. that map by the end of 27 is going to be colored throughout with some kind of activity, whether that's asphalt reconstruction, chip seals, mill and overlay, etc. So it's a little bit or a lot of apples to oranges because this one is just 2 years worth of work through now. The other one is kind of showing through 2027. But part of the beauty of the maintenance work is that we can adjust that in real time according to your priorities and the actual conditions of the streets. So.
Yeah, I think something like that is useful for all residents to see. I think the impact is pretty great. So as much as we can show that, I think that would be advantageous for sure to be able to show not only have we accomplished these large projects, which are great, but even on these, you know, the overlay of all of the streets, when you see that maintenance map, that really adds a lot of color and context to the conversation, particularly when, what was our budget before, 400,000 per annum for that? Six. So that's a pretty big difference there to be able to show that.
And our engineering department updates this graphic every year as the new roads are approved. So we'll be able to see that next year as well.
And as your index goes up, Tammy, theoretically you should have to spend a little less money because the treatment, you don't have to tear it all out and redo it, which is the most expensive option.
But my thought was, with all the expansion, there's still other roads that are going to need some love.
Yeah.
And I do agree with Laura that we need to be looking at the east side. So I just want to make sure that we're, you know, prepared sufficiently because as these roads grow, they're still going to need work. Like 35th just got redone, but we don't know what's going to happen with that, you know, few years.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good. We'll get this published widely and let people know it's available. Thank you for all your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, our good friends from the Greeley Evans School District are here to give us an update on all the good fun stuff they got going on. So.
Well, thank you. I hope it is fun stuff for you. Thanks. How are you?
Great.
Good. Well, Mayor Clark, councilors, thank you so much for allowing us some time to speak with you tonight and give you an update on Greeley Evans School District 6. I'm assuming I can advance my slides with this. All right, great. Well, I'm Teresa Myers. I'm the Chief of Communications for District 6, and I realize I am a very poor substitute for our Superintendent, Dr. Deirdre Pilch, who I'm afraid to report is a little under the weather and didn't want to risk coming out tonight. So I do appreciate you giving us the time to give you this update tonight. I do want to make a few introductions in the audience. Our board president, Michael Matthews, is here. Our board vice president, Terry Pappas, and we have some of our principals from our Evans schools, Matt Thompson from Dos Rios, Angie McDowell from Centennial, Stephanie Knox from Prairie Heights, and Ann Ramirez from Hyman Elementary School. So we thank them for being here tonight, and if you have any specific questions, they are available to answer those as we move ahead. So I feel like this is outdated. Welcome to the District 6 school year because we are halfway through the first semester already, believe it or not. Time moves quickly in the schools, but we feel like it's still a new year. But we actually had our count date this week. I think many of you know October, the closest that we get to October 1st is our count date, and we are a growing district, so we will not have an official count till later in November as we try to audit those counts. But right now, these are some of the initial counts that we're looking at for the schools, particularly in Evans, which we have seen growth in. Now, Hyman's enrollment is down a little bit because we did pull students off of Hyman. They were really, really large. When we created the boundary for the new Toynton Academy of Pre-Engineering, some of the students did come out of that Hyman boundary, and a few actually out of Prairie Heights as well. But we are still a growing district. Our initial counts show we're up about 400 students overall this year, but that will certainly shake out in the next few weeks as we really look at those numbers. Our graduation rates over time are also a good news and a celebration for us. Last year, we were up to 84.1% of on-time graduation. Now, there's another figure for completion rate, which is those students who don't finish on time for the 4 years. But this is really the big number we look at and measure against, and is certainly a huge part of our strategic plan to get that number to increase. While we don't, again, have official numbers for our graduation rates this year, that will be reported to the state board in, I believe, December or January. But we are looking at preliminary numbers, and we think we will go up again. So that's good news, especially during the pandemic and some other challenging times for us. It's good that we're seeing that trajectory continue. I think some of you may know about our strategic plan. This really is the basis for all the work we do in District 6, and I do mean all the work. Everything that we do really is tied back to these 4 focus areas, which we have worked with the community, with our staff, with our students to develop. So these big 4 focus areas, student learning and achievement, strengthening partnerships, climate and culture, and organizational and operational effectiveness. Of course, student learning and achievement is really at the center of all that, and the other 3 exist to support that. But we have some really exciting initiatives that will be coming in the next few years with the redo of this strategic plan. One of those including really developing personalized learning plans for every single student, so every student has a plan for graduation and beyond, and to really codify that in a meaningful way for every student. And I mean every student, whether they are on an IEP in special education, whether they're English language learners, it doesn't matter, all means all. And we will achieve that for all of our students, which is exciting. Under strengthening partnerships, we do big work to do community outreach, not only with our stakeholders, but which would include our parents and our staff, but with the community in general and our business partners. Part of this initiative, which is very exciting, is we will be trying to develop a plan to give back to the community ourselves in a more meaningful way through both students and staff, giving staff contract time to give back to the community and volunteer, and really encouraging and actually requiring students to do a certain amount of community service, which many students do already for different programs and reasons, but really trying to make that across the board K-12. So that's exciting work we're doing in that area. Climate and culture, we're always trying to work with our students on addressing their needs, mental health needs, social needs, so continuing that work. And then operational and organizational effectiveness really focuses on the finances, the hiring, our retention rates, but a lot of that work is actually in our bond issue right now. So as you've seen buildings get renovated and go up around the community, a lot of that work is in that operational and organizational effectiveness. One initiative that we've done this year that you may have heard about that I just want to touch on briefly is our school board elected to use reserve funds to fund meals for all students this year. Many of you may know that under the pandemic, the USDA gave us a waiver to feed all students during the pandemic. We found that to be extremely popular and needed in our community. Right now we sit at about 65% of our students qualifying for free or reduced lunch, but we know there's a significant amount of families who sit right on the cusp of that, and they do incur meal debt throughout the year because they can't pay off those meal debts, and that's become a problem for us. So the board did decide to go ahead and fund one time this year $2 million to feed all students. It's been very well received. And part of the reasons why they did that for a year is we believe under the new Medicaid requirements to use Medicaid as a factor in deciding whether students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Actually, as a district, we'll be able to qualify for that next year. So we're hoping that we are on trajectory to do that, so that probably just be a one-year expenditure. And we're happy to feed kids. We know hungry kids don't learn. So did want to touch on our Career Pathways program. These are growing and so popular among our high school students in particular. We have 12 career academies, and I know that slide is impossible to read, but that's what you're seeing up there. And then underneath that, we have more than 30 career pathways, which is everything from culinary arts to construction trades to engineering to early child care. Really base that on a lot of the needs in the community and the interests of our students, which I'll talk about in a minute as I talk about our new Career and Technical Education Center, which is very exciting. As part of the bond issue, when we sold our bonds initially in 2019, after we passed that bond issue, we got a really favorable return on those bonds. So with the proceeds of that initial sale, we got approval through our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to move ahead with a project at the old CDOT site on 14th Avenue and 2nd Street, which will become, I'm so excited, our new Jefferson High School and a career and technical education center. So that will include the construction trades program, which is already part of Jefferson, and the early childhood program, which is also part of Jefferson. But it will also include an information technology program and cybersecurity focus, welding, and our #1 pick among students for a program, cosmetology. So we've never had a cosmetology program before, so this will be open to every student in District 6, not just the students at Jefferson High School. So I'm sure it will be extremely popular, but the good news is we do have room to grow at that site. So in a future bond issue, we may add additional programs or capacity at that site going forward. So very nice to have that used. I think you all know that site is right adjacent to Billy Martinez Elementary School, which is also getting a large addition from our bond issue, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This is actually a video I don't think is going to work, so I'm going to skip that. And we're going to go on to just talk about the bond issue. I think most of you know, and some of you were able to attend some of our events. We opened the new Greeley West High School in August. If you've driven by there, they're actually getting a parking lot. That old building did not want to die. I was just like praying every day, please let it go. But it did not go quietly, but that's okay. It's down now. We are getting the parking lot paved, and they're hoping by November 1st to have that work completed. The new Toyton Academy of Pre-Engineering is open. It is a beautiful building built by Roach Constructors of Greeley, and we are at capacity there. We are PK through 6 this year, and then we will go to 7th and 8th grade next year, and we expect that school to be probably more than full by the time we get to that 8th grade. So that's good news. That draws not only a boundary, but we have about 300 slots there for open enrollment. And we have students represented there from every school in the district. And we are providing some limited transportation to that school in order to accommodate access to that school and kids who want that pre-engineering program. So I'm going to go through some of the exciting projects we've done in Evans in particular. Many of you were at the ribbon cutting for our Chapel K-8 Arts Magnet. That is a very large addition that we barely got done in time for school to start, and it's not done, but we did get it open for students in time for school to start. And that is a significant addition, including some beautiful performing art space that's very flexible for the school to use in many different ways. Art room, dance room, music rooms, really to encompass that performing arts focus, as well as additional classrooms, and we were able to get rid of all the portables on that site, which is the best news. So the old part of the building did get a rehab as well with new fixtures, paint, flooring, carpeting, all of that. Dos Rios Elementary was one of the first projects that we did under the bond issue, and they got a new secured entry, a smart lab, a new gym floor, and then we actually had to go back. We got into the HVAC, BAC system at that school and decided it needed some additional work. So our oversight committee, again, allocated some additional dollars to do some really significant work on that. Looks beautiful. The smart lab is amazing. If you ever get a chance to go over there, we'd be happy to show that to you. Oops, did I go too far? Nope. Hyman Elementary is one of our newer schools, but it's still 20 years old. So it was opened in 2003, but we were able to also get a secure entry on that school, install the smart lab, and then we're able to update all those other flooring, door hardware, some other things that really needed to be updated in that school. And then Centennial Elementary will actually be in our final phase of the bond issue, and we'll get similar work done on it. It's a really stable building. We do have some portables there. We probably aren't going to be able to put an addition on that school at this time, but we will be able to do rehab on the brick and mortar school inside and get that done probably in next year. Prairie Heights Middle School is our newest school pre-bond issue, replacement of John Evans. We're not doing a ton of work out there, but we are doing some career and college readiness out there. I was just out there this afternoon with some of our board members, and we got to see this beautiful studio they have that they use for some enrichment programs and technology enhancement programs, and then they do also have a new smart lab. Just to mention what a smart lab is, those are really a project-based learning lab that we have been able to install in most of our, I think all of our K-8 elementary and middle schools now in partnership with the Success Foundation. They would raise money for one smart lab, and then we would use our mill levy override dollars to do a matching grant smart lab. So through that process, we were able to get those at all schools. They are amazing project-based learning for all grade levels. So I did want to talk about the mill levy override. We passed that in 2017, and it does sunset next year. Mill levy override for school districts, and I'm sure most of you who are in government are familiar with this, is a way to secure local funding above and beyond what the state gives us in our allocation of per pupil funding. So you must go to the voters to ask for that to be approved. We did that in 2016. We missed by about 1 percentage point. We came back in 2017 with a slightly different plan, and it passed pretty overwhelmingly, actually. So that is 10 mills of property tax on residential and commercial properties. And we spent that specifically on safety and security and transportation. We were able to replace many school buses with that. We supported academic and vocational programs, including all of our career pathways. We provided this was huge for our staff and our teachers. We provided updated instructional materials, including textbooks and digital instructional materials for every single content area in every single grade level, some of which had not been updated for 16 years. So you can imagine a lot changes in 16 years. We are starting to start that process over again, actually, because curriculum really should be updated about every 7 years. So that's an important continuation of updating materials. We used a significant amount of those dollars to attract and maintain a competitive workforce. What that meant really is giving increases of wages to our hourly employees to try to bring them into market. I know all of you who are in government feel the same pain we do. We cannot hire bus drivers. We cannot hire nutrition service workers. We cannot hire custodians. We cannot hire paraprofessionals to work with our special education students. We are really suffering in that area. So raising those salaries has helped us some. We continue to struggle a bit, but we are working toward trying to get those positions filled for our students. And then, of course, our charter schools received an equal per pupil expenditure of that MLO and used it for they have very similar needs that we do. So this August, the Board of Education decided to go ahead and put a renewal of that MLO on the ballot for this November. And so that will be on your ballot. They decided to sunset it in 10 years. Quite frankly, 7 years is a pretty short turnaround for that, and as you all know, elections are expensive, so we wanted to minimize that, so they went ahead and did the 10-year sunset on the renewal, and that will be on your ballot. These are just some slides to talk more specifically about how that money was spent. I do want to point out in the area of academic and vocational programs, concurrent enrollment for students in UNC and Ames, we were able to increase that triple-fold. So we had about 300 students enrolled in college classes that we, by law, have to pay for when the students are our students. We have now over 1,000 students enrolled in college classes at Ames and UNC, so that's been huge. We've also been able to significantly increase the number of industry certificates that we're able to provide in cooperation with Ames Community College as well for programs like welding, automotive, a lot of different just industry certificates, CNA, that students can go right in after high school and work with those certificates. So that's been huge for our kids. Just go through these quickly. I think safety and security has been a huge part of our MLO. We've got security cameras now at all of our middle and high schools. If we get the new one passed, we'll actually, with the one we currently have, we're starting to put some security cameras in our K-8 schools, and then if we get the new one passed, we will start to look at our elementary school needs. That's just become an incredible tool for us to be able to use to find as a deterrent for any type of illegal or unsavory activities, but also just as a post-mortem to find out what happened or if a building's broken into, we're able to identify that, those kind of things. So that's been huge. We have done a significant amount of bus replacement. We will be able to slow that down over the years because we've gotten rid of some of our most elderly buses, which were 30 plus years old. So that's been huge. And then, of course, doing some of that deferred maintenance, we've been able to secure some Building Excellent Schools Today grants from the state of Colorado with matching funds from this MLO. So we've replaced a lot of roofs and done some of that big work that we wouldn't normally be able to do with our regular capital funds. And then I talked a lot about instructional materials. I will mention devices. We were able to get to one-to-one devices with students. I know many people think that we used ESSER dollars from the COVID relief funds to pay for those. We actually were already there, but the COVID relief dollars really came into effect when we had broken devices or we needed internet access for students. We were able to use those ESSER dollars to do some of that emergency purchasing of devices, so that was helpful. And then, of course, that wage increase was really significant for our employees. When we do the renewal of the mill levy override, we're actually just continuing to fund most of those programs and needs that we have in the district. But a few of the positions that we were able to hire with those COVID relief funds, we've really found valuable and would like to keep, and so we will fund those if the MLO passes through that. One of those is the District Online Learning Academy, which we had to create under COVID for students who did not want to return to in-person learning. And that's been a popular school. It's very well run. And we are really trying to attract students who are maybe in other online programs that are not local and they can't get that local support back into our fold with that District 6 Online Academy. We really do want to keep the school counselor and social worker positions we've added. I think most of you have heard that the mental health needs of our students and staff has increased. It is real for a variety of reasons, and I think COVID just accentuated that. So we would like to keep those positions. We did lower class sizes a little bit with those COVID relief dollars by hiring additional staff to lower those. We would like to keep that. I do think that's a valuable asset for our students to have some slightly smaller classrooms to learn in. And then those attendance advocate positions, which are not actually our employers. We contracted with a company called Zero Dropouts to provide those. But those have been an invaluable position of going out and finding kids, actually doing home visits when students don't report to school, meeting with families, really trying to overcome the barriers of why students aren't attending school. And those are as varied as the kids we have. So so we would like to keep those positions. And then we did add a few parent and family advocate positions, and those are really to create relationships directly with parents, especially some who may be struggling to get involved with the school in other ways or in their children's education, and we would like to keep those positions as well. So I do want to just talk a little bit about the cost of this MLO. I think most of you understand that residential property is taxed at a much lower rate than commercial property in the state of Colorado. And right now we are actually in a freeze for that. It won't last probably forever, but the 6.95% for residential assessment on a $400,000 home with our mill levy override is about $278 a year. And you can see how that exponentially increases for our commercial property owners. But I will say that we've gotten good support for this from our commercial property owners, such as Richmark and some of the other large landowners in our area that understand, well-funded schools, get them the workforce and the people that they need to continue the work that they do as well. So they've been very supportive. But anyway, I'm just here to provide factual information, so I will let you look at the arguments for the continuation of the MLO, and then I also have quite a few arguments against that I will let you look at. And I think I've taken up more than my 15 minutes, so I'm sorry, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have going forward. And this is just some more work on the bond issue. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Yes, I have one, man. Good evening.
Good evening.
Has District 6 implemented new security guidelines moving forward for the upcoming school years?
I don't know if I can address what new security guidelines you're specifically talking about. We certainly are constantly evolving our security protocols at all of our schools. Our Chief of Security, John Gates, and our Assistant Chief of Security, Wade Corliss, are both former police officers. Wade most recently served as an SRO in our district. So they are bringing some new protocols to our district as far as response and really what we've emphasized this year is that people need to abide by the protocols that we already have in place. We're just finding that after Uvalde, don't prop your doors open, and so we're really going in and emphasizing some of that training for all of our staff in all of our schools and saying, please abide by the protocols we already have, and then let's revisit those and think about what else we can do to make our schools safe.
What assurance do you have of that? That's staff and students. Is it something we practice daily, like a reminder to let everybody know that these protocols have to be implemented?
We try to, and as you can imagine, every building is different. We have even our building managers are part of our security team. They go around and check for open doors. They go around and check to make sure all the locks and doors are working. Our office personnel in the front are certainly our front line of allowing visitors in and making sure that they're checking IDs. We do have a system where every visitor at the school has to have a Colorado ID or a proper ID, passport or such that they can scan, and we check them against the sex offender registry list at every school. So no visitors allowed in without presenting that type of ID. And we are starting to open up our schools again. That kind of went away during COVID, right? We kind of closed down our schools, but we do want volunteers in our schools, so we are re-implementing that and re-upping that. So that's a great system for us, and we did purchase that through the MLO.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, I just got back from a tour of Europe on some island nations, and had some interesting conversation with some of the people on the tour buses, because those countries that we were in, all three countries we were in, required seatbelts on the buses to be buckled. And most of these people were Americans, so they were commenting quite extensively at various points about the lack of seatbelt use responsibility on school buses. So do the new buses have seatbelts?
Yes, actually all of our buses have seatbelts. It is difficult to require children sometimes to sit in seatbelts and for a bus driver to know whether or not they're abiding by that as we're doing. But I will say school buses are built extremely safely right now. They are built to protect children in a crash with the high seats and the roll bars and the reinforced roofs. It's pretty amazing what those buses can withstand. And knock on wood, we did have a serious bus accident a few years ago, and we had no deaths in that. But it is a concern always.
Well, I think most of us that were on those tours were amazed to find out that that was the law of all three countries. They had to use seatbelts on the buses.
Well, as we all know as drivers, it's pretty important to have those on.
I just want to say thank you for coming, and I appreciate the work. I was at one of your meetings, and I just have to say I have a newfound admiration for you all. Nothing like this, our meetings here. You guys endure a lot, and so I just want to say I appreciate you. I'm excited about, the career academies and the pathways that we have. I'm excited for the cosmetology component just because there's a lot that in that industry that's happening now, and I think that definitely provides an avenue for students to even start their own business. It is a great way, to get them out there and also contribute to the community. But I also do like the fact that we have over 1,000 students enrolled in Ames as well as UNC. I think that is great for students that want that challenge, also want to continue their educational career at a higher level, and only that, finish quicker. So that's really, really great. I have a question for you though. You know that Evans doesn't have a high school, and that's something we would love to see in the future. And, it's just seeing how many students that we have within our schools now. And also, I was curious to know how many students, from Evans are going to the high schools and having to travel, to the specific high schools. And do we know if any of our Evans students are going to any other high schools in the vicinity? Just to see if, how can we as a city or even, collaboratively, in the future work together to ensure everyone kind of stays housed within locally. So I was just curious about those numbers. And I know I've talked to the superintendent before about that. And she's like, yes, eventually we'll get to those numbers to look at what that looks like.
Well, I do not have the specific number of high school students who live in the Evans zip code, but I will tell you a majority of your students do attend our high schools, and a lot of them actually attend Greeley West, which we opened the new Greeley West with a capacity of 1,800 students, and they have over 1,900 students this year. So we definitely know that we will need to build a new high school, and I can say that we are determined to build that high school in Evans and are actively looking for property all the time to construct that high school. There is no reason with the growth that you've seen in this community that you should not have your own high school. I don't know when that'll be. We need to pay down on our bonding capacity some to be able to run another bond issue, especially to build a high school. And those are our most expensive buildings to construct. But I would say in the next 10 years, it is imperative that we build a new high school, and that will most likely, if I'm here, be in Evans. If I have anything to say about that. But we are actively looking for property in Evans. That is the plan. I mean, that really is the plan. And we just aren't able to find much property in Greeley anymore anyway. And certainly you need a significant amount of property with playing fields and all that to build a high school. So
I can say personally, I'm not speaking for anybody on the council. I know I went to one of the MLO meetings and everything, and I was very impressed by everything that was being done throughout District 6. And I was in one of those work sessions that we had those little group breakouts and everything. And one of the things that you guys were very transparent on was everything that you've done with the money since the MLO. So I personally I'm definitely going to support it. I mean, District 6 has been great to my kids. They both went to Dos Rios, then one went off to Prairie Heights when it first opened. And then the other one went off to Winograd for middle school. Then one graduated from Northridge, now at UNC. And the other one now over in Early College Academy. And I know one thing my youngest said, he's like, I wish I was able to go to that Torrington Engineering Academy. That would have been great. But he just missed it by a year. So, but it's great to see not only, things that you guys are putting out there, but you're also offering trades as well, cosmetology, welding, all those other trade programs, and not just college focused, getting your students graduate, get to college, get a degree, but people that want to go into trades, and have that pathway that it's, you guys are working with Eames and you guys are offering that curriculum. So it's great to see all of the stuff that's going on in the district. So.
Well, it's really about creating opportunities for every single student based on their interests and needs. I really do believe that is 100% our focus.
That's great.
So.
And I have to say, even as a parent, I have 2 young children in Goshen Elementary School. And I was a part of the McCullough, the design advisory group, and I was able to also provide insight. And I really enjoyed the fact that throughout this process, the district also engaged parents within every step of the way, or even provided the opportunity to, if they were able to. And for me personally, I also support the MLO. I think for me, I spend money on many things, and I think this is definitely a wise choice to spend money, especially when it comes to our future generations and providing them with the tools that they need to thrive.
Well, and you certainly know the growth that you're foreseeing in the future. That is growth that will directly impact our district, as well as the growth in Greeley. And even in Milliken, we have a potential development that will actually be in our school district. So that's kind of hard for people to understand, that our boundaries extend beyond just the cities of Greeley and Evans. But we need to accommodate all those children. So we do need that support moving forward. So we appreciate that very much.
I do have a question. I personally am also a huge advocate of D6. I have reaped the benefits. Okay, my kids have reaped the benefits.
Right?
Mine too.
My youngest was a portable kid for years, so being in a classroom this year, he is thriving, and we love it. We're very excited about that. One of the concerns I have with the MLO is really ensuring that the district gets the relative funding. So with Senate Bill 21-293, there have been changes in how the legislature really calculates the residential assessment rate and the commercial assessment rate. And, this year, as an example, ag's rate went down to, I think, 26%, 26.5%. other local governments have an ability to adjust that mill levy. I know for the Senate bill, and I pulled it up and was looking at it because it's been thick in my brain lately, but we have, school districts have an ability to offset that with state funding, but it does explicitly state that that does not include an override.
Correct.
So what is the school district's plan for that? Is there an ability to add language to the ballot measure to allow for an adjustment for legislative changes? I'm just not sure how that works and how that's being considered.
It wouldn't be this time with just a renewal. And again, you hit the nail on the head. The legislature is a moving target as far as these mill levy allocations to different landowner groups. We do benefit some from the oil and gas industry in Greeley, which has stabilized our mill levy override a bit, although as you well know, that's an up and down industry, but they are at a taxation rate of 100% of actual value. So that has stabilized us a little bit, and we are in a growing property value area, so that's helped as well. But again, these mill levy overrides are volatile based on property values, so we know that they may go up and down based on those valuations and whatever the legislature chooses to do with all these different areas. I mean, you know, the commercial property is another one that they've been voicing concerns about, and that large tax rate from Gallagher. So we just watch it very closely and make our budgets accordingly based on the projections that we believe we'll get specifically from the state and the mill levy override. The state, you know how complicated school finance is too. We never know what our allocation is going to be from the state on a yearly basis either, whether or not they're going to try to pay down on the budget stabilization factor or not. So that's something we just have to watch and budget for every year. So that's just the life of a school district.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And once again, big supporter. Whatever I can do to help you, just let me
Appreciate
know.
that.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We really appreciate you guys being here. We look forward to seeing you guys more often for some updates.
We'd be
It's
happy
really
to
great.
come back anytime. And please, if any of you want to visit our schools, please reach out to us. We would love to have you in there whenever possible. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And to Dr. Thompson, my son Brandon Clark, I don't know if you remember him. He says hi. I told him he would be here.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's the best.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you again. Thank you for your time.
Moving on to our 2023 operating and capital budget.
As Jackie gets set tonight, I just wanted to say a special thank you to the team that you see in front of you here. Jackie and her finance team are here, as well as our leadership team members and our department heads. Folks, if you're a department head, leadership team, finance department, please stand up and show council that you're here. These are the folks that are responsible for what you're about to see. These are the folks that developed this budget, worked very closely with us on their needs. We beat them severely about the head and shoulders to get their needs reduced to affordable amounts, and our heart goes out to them. Tremendous thanks for all the hard work done on this. And then one particular new person to you that you have not met yet, Doug Talmadge. If you'd stand up for just a moment, please. Doug is your new operations superintendent. He is over water, stormwater, and streets. Just started in August. So.
Welcome.
Thank you, folks, for being here. So I'll turn it over to Jackie in just a moment, but this work session is an opportunity for us to present budget recommendations to you. It is the fourth installment, if you will, the fourth component to the budget. As you recall, in August we came to you with the revenue projections. We've come back with the capital plan and have had your review of that, and then most recently the compensation plan as well for a couple of work sessions. We appreciate all your input to date. We've taken that, incorporated that into what you're about to see tonight. Also tremendously thank the Finance Committee. Councilmembers Johnson and Providence were instrumental in helping us revision some of these slides and the information, clarify some of what you're about to see tonight. So thank you all for your help with that. With that, I'll turn it over to Jackie.
Good evening again, Mayor Clark, members of City Council, and Randy as well. Thank you for acknowledging our fellow staff members, and your leadership and guidance in this process too has been instrumental. I just get to be the one who gets to communicate the budget to you, so it's my privilege to do that. But it is really all of our budget. It's your budget. It's a roadmap of how we plan to provide the services to our community with the available funding. So really, we all have a part of this. So it's really neat to see everybody in attendance. Hopefully someone will pick me if I misspeak. And if you have really good questions, now is definitely the day to hear from people that really know what they're doing. But I'll try to move through a little quicker than anticipated and keep an eye on the clock. But we will hit all of our major operating funds, talk about some of our capital improvement plan and where that ended up, and our overarching guiding principles for the budget. And really, as you know, Randy and I talked about what are we trying to accomplish this year, these three words kept coming up in everything that we were doing. So the plan in front of you tonight is a budget that is realistic, achievable, and sustainable, not just for 2023, but for the 5 years in the future. That's incredibly important for our ongoing health of the city. It has a tremendous focus on continuing to secure the workforce of our city tonight, and prioritizing those most critical capital projects, knowing that we don't have the available money to do everything, and really forcing staff to prioritize, make those hard decisions, again, of what we really needed for this next year. In 2022, what we're seeing is continued sales tax collections that are very strong, exceeding budget and exceeding this time last year. We have severance taxes and federal mineral lease income that has well exceeded our budget this year as well. Those two things have really added to the available funding and fund balance that we anticipate for this year. We also have a number of staffing challenges that, while it's hurting on an operational front, creating some challenges there, is also resulting in vacancy savings on a financial picture. We have some uncertain one-time development revenue that's creating some challenge into what we're seeing now, as well as in the future. And we know that we're continuing to rebuild from 2021 and 2020's challenges that we did encounter. Overall, the good of this list definitely outweighs the challenges here, and it's created some possible funding for one-time needs. And so we have current year revenue that could be used to further some projects, some ideas, some opportunities, and we'll talk about that in a future slide. So as I mentioned, this budget is balanced, not just for 2023, but in the ongoing 5-year period, and our current service levels are continued at today's standard, and we've taken special caution to planning for the future and the uncertainties that we might face. So what you'll see is general fund revenue is projected to increase 3% overall over our projected current year actuals. We will be increasing supplies and services costs only where necessary. So we're not recommending a blanket inflationary cost increase to supplies and services for the departments, which is where some of that struggle came in looking at what we really needed, but really just those known costs that we know will be increasing in the future. We'll talk more about payroll budget and where that ended up in securing the workforce as well as the capital. But we do know that economic recessionary impacts are continued to be a hot topic. We know that there are challenges anticipated in 23 and 24 that we have to be planning for today. And this budget gives some room for council to adjust if necessary if those forecasts hit harder in some areas than others. It does provide you with some flexibility going into the future. So as we look specifically at the general fund, our total revenues are anticipated to increase 3% over 2022 projected revenues. That will mean our total revenue budget for the general fund will be a little over $17 million. So please note after that red chart in those 4 subsequent years, that does increase as well. So each of these revenue streams we look at on a very, very specific basis, look at historical trends, look at what we know from our subject matter experts in the various fields about what might be coming in future years, and making sure that we have a realistic handle on what those revenues are, not only for next year, but in that 5-year, and still happy to see that overarching year-over-year increase in those revenues. Our general fund sales tax is the largest component of general fund revenue. And this is anticipated to go up just 1% from 2022's projected 2023's budget. It'll set that sales tax budget at a little more than $10 million, which is a kind of new threshold level for the general fund sales tax there. Talk about why there. So we know our monthly collections continue to exceed budget and continue to exceed our actual results from 2021. That is really great, positive news, gives us a little bit of breathing room as we set these projections going forward. And we have in the various sectors here the industries that we gather specifically in our sales tax to look at some trending. So like businesses are grouped into these various categories. And the biggest one we see potential for next year continues to be our online seller category. So we're projecting a 15% increase over this year as that category continues to expand, not only in the number of businesses that are remitting that sales tax to Evans, as well as just the dollar amount and that magnitude. So we're seeing continued month over month huge increases here. Our staff continues to reach out to businesses that we're seeing doing business, we're seeing deliveries, we're hearing of doing business in Evans. We reach out to them individually and encourage their participation and let them know their responsibility. So we've really done, staff has, Tom's done a great job in City 2 of really reaching out to businesses and really trying to, at any chance we get, make sure we're getting compliance from those guys. Our convenience stores, we're anticipating these businesses to perform at current levels with no huge increases or decreases, just stability in what we're seeing today. I'll skip industrial for a second. And looking at those bottom row there, base and storefront retail stores in the city, we're seeing about a 2.5% increase month over month. We anticipate that will continue. Restaurant is currently at about a 4% growth rate and anticipating that to continue as well. Motor vehicle, we're seeing larger than 5% growth. Although we anticipate that to come to a stop at some point. So we've benefited on a sales tax basis from higher both used and new vehicle sales prices that are ultimately increasing that sales tax rate there. And then industrial is our oil and gas supplier businesses here in Evans. They are our most volatile, as is anything oil and gas related on a revenue stream. And we are anticipating only 50% of our 2022 projected, which is our actual revenue today. If we only get half next year of everything we've received this year, that's all our budget is including for next year. And that's really in the mid $300,000 range. So very, very small percentage of a $10 million sales tax budget. But that is overall a 1% increase that is adding to our 3% increase overall in general fund. Other major factors to point out in this is an increase in our property tax, so going up to $840,000 based on the latest assessed valuation from Weld County. So nice to see that going back up, similar to a level we were in 2020, as the school district was so kind to point out. The industrial production and values there is a big driving force on our property tax as well. We do have a larger number of building planned units next year than what we're currently projecting coming in, which is good. It means that development is still coming. It maybe didn't happen in 22, but we have it included in our projections in the 5 years. So we are capturing that. We're continuing to increase our programs like our neighborhood services abatements. That continues to add a large amount of revenue that's in our miscellaneous category. All really great work to our city to add to a base revenue budget of just over $17 million. So as Randy alluded to, department heads did have a long list of needs. I think there's always more needs than we have money to fund. And we did have almost $1 million of requests come in this year. I don't think we were surprised by that. The needs continue to grow. But this is the short list of what is being recommended as additions to the budget. And you'll notice at the top it says supplies and services. So we are not recommending any new personnel positions in the 2023 budget. Rather, we are anticipating and know we will have a large cost increase with our current contract with the Humane Society. They're changing their methodology of how they're building their cities and counties, I guess everybody, all of their users, going instead of a per animal basis to a per capita basis. This will impact our budget fairly significantly. I think an increase of about $35,000 is what this will add to our base budget going forward. Our neighborhood services program continues to expand what they can do, hoping to implement a strategic vision there and some increased programs, which is a great additional cost onto our budget. And then we have additional costs in our IT realm for services, Verizon services on all of our items, as well as an integration opportunity with our GIS and our Laserfish, which is kind of our document repository. So we're able to better map locations of items, locations of everything really. Ideally we would like to expand our GIS program to be something more robust and user friendly, not only for staff, but also business community and all of our operations. So anytime we have the ability to increase that GIS capability, then that's huge for the city as well. So just under $75,000 of additional ongoing supplies and services costs is what is included in the budget tonight. What is not included then are the personnel requests. So $900,000 is the total cost for needs to potentially be considered in a future year's budget inclusion. So we know there's continued needs for increasing the number of police officers, as well as our community services technician. Would be a police non-sworn position that could help support police in various functions as well. We know those will be a rising priority in future years. We have a few different positions on our administrative side that could also help both customer service and capacity of various departments. Things like customer service administrator that we used to have that went away during COVID. We haven't brought that back. As I mentioned, GIS, that functionality continues to be even more critical and functional for the city. If we had an additional GIS employee, that's something that we could further. We currently only have one on staff. There's always a need for additional financial analysis work we could be doing, furthering rate studies and plans and future growth as well. Economic development continues to be a big one and could use some additional part-time support. This was a position that used to exist years ago. Paralegal for our legal team, as well as increased need for website, social media content creator, somebody to really help look at making sure we're getting the right information out to our residents as quickly as possible, that sort of thing. So I would imagine these are positions we'll be talking to council about in 3 years. I would doubt any of these will go away, but they are needs. I think it's important for us to know what we can fund as well as what we can't fund and what those needs are. So department heads were great about still providing these needs, knowing that the funding opportunities would be very, very slim, but still letting us know of those needs. So going back to supplies and services, as I mentioned, instead of doing an overall inflationary increase to department budgets, we worked very closely with each of our colleagues to ask, what do you need different in next year's budget? What do you need more of or less of? It ended up being an 8% increase over the 2022 budget to bring that cost to $5.2 million for next year. So it is large. A big one of these increases was utility costs. Almost $100,000 was just our city-run utility costs for streetlights, for instance. All of our buildings, IT licensing and services continues to just go up as we have an increasing number of staff and support and technology needs. Building inspection costs will go up. In our revenue slide, I mentioned that planned number of units was anticipated to go up. So we have a corresponding revenue to offset building inspection costs. Nevertheless, it increases our supplies and services level. In PD, we talked about Humane Society cost. We also have increases each year from Weld County for dispatch costs. I think that's about $17,000. Property evidence management software, that is a huge component of what the police department has to manage and have properly tracked as well. So there's some costs related to that. We are fortunate that the staff they're bringing on are highly trained and professional, and it's important that we have training and membership budgets in all of these departments. We did have a couple that didn't have a training budget until this next year, and there hadn't been a need for it before. So that's an exciting new need, I think, as well. And then things like fuel costs, ice slicer, all the things that Doug will have fun with. We all know those are at a rising cost as well. So it did end up being fairly significant, but these costs are going to known items and not just a blanket layer. On the personnel side, we start our total base salary and benefits citywide at just shy of $13 million. Council had given staff direction at a previous meeting to continue with implementation of the classification and compensation study. So we do have those costs included in the budget, as well as the potential for merit increase for staff and police step increases that were included in that study as well. So those items have been incorporated into the budgets and total numbers that you're seeing tonight. That would bring our citywide salary and benefit costs to $13.7 million. And on the left side, you can see we like to just know what that split is between our general fund and enterprise fund costs. And it has been pretty consistently within a percentage or two, 88% to our general fund and 12% to our enterprise funds. And then our salary to benefit costs has not changed, I think, since I've updated this slide every year. And it's been 75% salary to 25% benefit cost. It does represent a 9% increase over this year's original budget for personnel costs. Our asset management plan for the general fund is an item we haven't had a chance to discuss yet. This budget does recommend $120,000 in our asset management plan for next year. And we have a few big ticket items that make up that cost request. $20,000 to replace flooring in our commercial kitchen here at the complex building. Weight and cardio replacement in our rec center. I think this is a consistent dollar amount. You'll probably see this item every year for the next decade as we look at the highest use, oldest, elliptical or treadmill or whatever needing to be replaced, as well as weights too each year. We know we need to replace the gym curtain here at the gym with an anticipated cost of $14,000, $12,000 to replace carpet in some of our facility rental spaces, keep those spaces up to par with how we would like. We've seen an increased number of rentals coming back and businesses holding their meetings. It's nice to pull in the morning and see lots of industry trucks. So it's nice to see that opportunity coming back to the city too. And then we have one vehicle that has been on our asset management request list for many years and doesn't quite rise to the highest need for that year, and it is finally at the highest need. So it's a truck that we have here used for our construction inspector. At this point, our fleet department is telling us it's becoming unsafe. It has a number of engine and braking problems that are not only making it more costly to fix than the vehicle might be worth, but rising to the level of being unsafe to drive. So it used to just be old and no one's favorite, but now it's finally breaking down. So they're probably happy about this one, but it is necessary for our safety as well to get that one replaced. So a total cost of $120,000 is what's included in the budget, all out of the general fund for next year. With all of those items included in the budget, we finally get to look at what that is on a summary level. So we do anticipate next year's budget to start with about a $12 million fund balance. Our revenues exceed our planned expenditures next year by $616,000. I think that's a larger margin than we've had since I presented this budget to you in the last few years. And please look out in the 5 years. 616,000 is the lowest in those 5 years. So we do have revenues looking like they would be exceeding our expenditures in each of those 5 years at a greater level than 2023. What that means is our ending fund balance would then increase to $12.6 million, again increasing each year, unless council would choose to direct some of that funds toward a different project. The slide on here in a second. Also important when we're looking at the total health of the city is our general fund reserves. And this number a little bit different based on how we're showing the commitments here. So bear with me. We do anticipate our ending 2023 year to have an ending fund balance of almost $18 million before we